A woman buried her fifth husband in 25 years, tears streaming down her porcelain cheeks as the small town of Riverside mourned alongside her. But when his brother demands one final look inside the casket, the bloody discovery he makes reveals a horrifying truth that would expose Victoria Ashford as the most dangerous woman their close-knit community had ever known. The funeral director tried to stop him. The mourners gasped in horror, but nothing could have prepared anyone for what lay beneath the silk lining of that mahogany casket. Evidence of a methodical killer who had perfected her craft over 2.5 decades, leaving a trail of bodies disguised as tragic accidents and mysterious illnesses. This is the chilling account of how one man's refusal to accept his brother's sudden death led to the unmasking of a predator who had been hiding in plain sight, using grief as her shield and sympathy as her weapon. What started as a quest for closure became a fight for justice that would shake the very foundations of a community that had unknowingly harbored a monster. Victoria Ashford was the kind of woman who commanded attention without demanding it. At 52 years old, she possessed an elegance that seemed untouched by the tragedies that had repeatedly befallen her. Her auburn hair was always perfectly styled, her wardrobe impeccable, and her smile could light up any room she entered. To the residents of Riverside, she was the epitome of grace under pressure, a woman who had endured more loss than anyone should have to bear. Her first husband, Robert Ashford, had died in a tragic car accident when Victoria was just 27. The young widow had been devastated, or so it appeared to everyone who knew her. She had inherited his successful accounting firm and his considerable life insurance policy. But neighbors remember how she seemed almost too fragile to handle such responsibilities. 3 years later, she married Thomas Whitmore, a local contractor who had helped renovate her home. Thomas was a robust man in his 40s, known for his hearty laugh and generous spirit. Their marriage lasted 6 years before Thomas suffered a fatal heart attack at the age of 48. The doctors said it was unexpected but not entirely surprising. His family had a history of heart disease. Victoria's third husband was Dr. Richard Blackwood, a respected physician who had actually treated Thomas during his final illness. Richard and Victoria had bonded over their shared grief and mutual understanding of life's fragility. Their marriage was brief, but passionate, lasting only 3 years before Richard died, from complications related to a rare blood disorder. The medical community was baffled, but these things happened sometimes in medicine. Husband number 4 was Gerald Morrison, a wealthy retired businessman who had swept Victoria off her feet with his charm and generosity. Gerald was 15 years older than Victoria, and their friends joked that he had found his fountain of youth in his beautiful wife. Unfortunately, Gerald's vitality was short-lived. He died from what appeared to be food poisoning that had progressed into septic shock. The health department investigated the local restaurants he had visited, but no source was ever identified. Now at husband number 5, Victoria had once again found herself draped in black, accepting condolences from a community that had watched her endure unimaginable loss. Daniel Hartwell had been different from her previous husbands, younger, more athletic, with a zest for life that had seemed to rejuvenate Victoria. At 45, Daniel was a successful real estate developer who had moved to Riverside specifically to be closer to Victoria after they met at a charity auction. Their whirlwind romance had surprised everyone, including Daniel's older brother, Nathan Hartwell. Nathan was a retired police detective who had moved to Riverside 5 years earlier to enjoy his golden years in the peaceful town. He had been initially skeptical of Victoria, not because he disliked her, but because he had seen too much in his 30 years of law enforcement to trust coincidences. Daniel and Victoria had been married for just 18 months, when Daniel suddenly fell ill with what doctors initially thought was a severe case of flu. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and within a week, he was dead. The cause of death was listed as acute liver failure, possibly caused by a reaction to over-the-counter medications he had been taking for his flu symptoms. Nathan had attended the funeral, standing in the back of the crowded church, watching his sister-in-law play the role of the grieving widow with what he was beginning to recognize as practiced perfection. Something about her performance felt rehearsed, too polished for someone who should have been overwhelmed by genuine grief. The funeral reception was held at Victoria's sprawling Victorian home on Elm Street. the same house she had shared with all 5 of her husbands. Nathan found himself studying the framed photographs that lined the mantelpiece. Victoria with each of her husbands, always smiling, always the picture of happiness. But there was something in her eyes, in each photo, that made Nathan's detective instincts prickle with unease. As he watched Victoria gracefully move through the crowd, accepting sympathy and support from neighbors and friends, Nathan made a decision that would change everything. He would not let his brother's death become just another tragic footnote in Victoria Ashford's seemingly cursed romantic history. Nathan Hartwell had always been methodical in his approach to investigations, and his brother's death would be no exception. The morning after the funeral, he drove to the Riverside Police Department and requested a meeting with Chief Patricia Donovan, a woman he had known professionally for years. "Nathan, I understand you're grieving, but Daniel's death was thoroughly investigated," Chief Donovan said, her voice gentle but firm. "The medical examiner found no evidence of foul play. Sometimes people just react badly to medication." 5 husbands, Patricia. 5 dead husbands in 25 years. Does that not strike you as statistically impossible? Chief Donovan leaned back in her chair. Statistically unusual, yes, but not impossible, and certainly not evidence of a crime. Victoria Ashford is a pillar of this community. She has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to local charities, volunteers at the hospital, and has never so much as received a parking ticket. Nathan left the police station unsatisfied, but not surprised. He had expected resistance, especially in a small town where reputation mattered more than statistics. He decided to conduct his own investigation, starting with what he knew best, following the money. His first stop was the county courthouse, where he spent hours poring over public records. What he discovered made his blood run cold. Each of Victoria's husbands had died shortly after updating their wills to name her as the primary beneficiary. Robert Ashford had left her his business and a $500,000 life insurance policy. Thomas Whitmore had left her his construction company and a $300,000 policy. Dr. Blackwood had left her his medical practice and investments worth over $800,000. Gerald Morrison had been the most generous, leaving her his entire estate valued at $2.3 million. Daniel's will, updated just 3 months before his death, left Victoria his real estate development company and a $1 million life insurance policy. In total, Victoria had inherited over $5 million from her deceased husbands, a fortune that would allow her to live comfortably for the rest of her life. Nathan's next step was to contact the previous medical examiners and coroners who had handled his brother's predecessors. Most were retired or had moved on to other positions, but he managed to track down Dr. Elizabeth Chen, who had performed the autopsy on Thomas Whitmore 15 years earlier. "I remember that case," Dr. Chen said over the phone. "Massive heart attack in a man with no prior history of heart disease. It was unusual, but not unheard of. Why are you asking about this now?" Nathan explained his concerns about the pattern of deaths surrounding Victoria. There was a long pause before Dr. Chen spoke again. "You know, there was something that bothered me about that case. The toxicology report was clean, but there were some cellular changes in the heart tissue that I had never seen before. I wanted to do more extensive testing, but the family, Victoria, insisted on a quick burial for religious reasons." "What kind of cellular changes?" "Microscopic damage that could have been consistent with certain types of poisoning, but nothing that would show up in a standard toxicology screen. At the time, I attributed it to the heart attack itself. But now that you mention it," Nathan felt his pulse quicken. "Would you be willing to look at the case file again?" "I will do better than that. I will contact some colleagues who might have worked on the other cases. If there is a pattern, we need to find it." Over the next few weeks, Nathan compiled a disturbing profile of Victoria's relationships. Each marriage had followed a similar pattern: a whirlwind romance, a quick wedding, a period of apparent happiness, and then a gradual deterioration in the husband's health, leading to sudden death. Victoria was always the devoted wife, caring for her sick husband right up until the end. Nathan also discovered that Victoria had been enrolled in nursing school for 2 years during her marriage to Robert, though she had never actually worked as a nurse. She had also taken several chemistry courses at the local community college during her marriage to Dr. Blackwood, claiming she wanted to better understand her husband's work. The most chilling discovery came when Nathan interviewed Gladys Tremaine, Victoria's elderly neighbor who had lived next door for 30 years. Gladys had watched Victoria's entire matrimonial history unfold from her kitchen window. "That woman has the strangest garden," Gladys whispered, glancing around nervously. "Always growing things that most people would not think to plant. Foxglove, oleander, castor beans. All beautiful flowers, mind you, but deadly if you know what you are doing with them." "What do you mean, deadly?" "My late husband was a botanist, dear. He taught me about plants. Those flowers Victoria grows, they contain some of the most potent natural toxins known to science. Digitalis from foxglove can cause heart failure. Oleander contains compounds that mimic heart medication overdoses. And castor beans, well, they contain ricin." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "Have you ever mentioned this to anyone?" "Who would believe me? Victoria Ashford, the grieving widow. The woman who brings me soup when I am sick and drives me to doctor appointments. Besides, lots of people grow those flowers. They are beautiful." That night, Nathan sat in his study, staring at the evidence he had collected. He had motive, $5 million worth of it. He had means, botanical knowledge, and access to deadly plants. He had opportunity, intimate access to each victim, as their loving wife. But he still did not have proof. And he knew that circumstantial evidence would never be enough to convince a jury, especially against someone as beloved as Victoria Ashford. He needed something more concrete, something that would expose Victoria's true nature to the world. As he sat there, contemplating his next move, Nathan's phone rang. It was Dr. Chen. "Nathan, I have been in contact with the other medical examiners. We have compared notes on all 5 cases, and we have found something disturbing. Each victim showed similar cellular changes in their major organs, changes that are consistent with chronic low-level poisoning by plant-based toxins. But the toxicology reports were clean. Because nobody was looking for those specific compounds, they break down quickly in the body, and most standard toxicology screens would not detect them unless specifically requested." Nathan gripped the phone tighter. "Is this enough to reopen the investigation?" "It is enough to request exhumation orders for toxicology retesting. But Nathan, you need to understand something. If Victoria Ashford is what we think she is not going to go quietly. Serial killers who have been successful for this long are often extremely intelligent and resourceful. You need to be very careful." As Nathan hung up the phone, he realized that Dr. Chen was right. If Victoria was indeed a serial killer, she had been perfecting her craft for over 2 decades. She would not hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatened to expose her secret. But Nathan was not about to let his brother's death go unavenged. He had spent 30 years bringing criminals to justice, and he was not about to stop now. He would expose Victoria Ashford for what she truly was, even if it meant putting his own life at risk. The phone call came at 3 o'clock in the morning, exactly 1 week after Daniel's funeral. Nathan was awakened by the shrill ringing, and he knew immediately that something was wrong. Victoria's voice was on the other end, trembling with what sounded like genuine fear. "Nathan, I am so sorry to call you so late, but something terrible has happened. Someone broke into the mausoleum where Daniel is buried. They have disturbed his casket." Nathan was instantly alert. "What do you mean, disturbed?" "The groundskeeper found it this morning. The casket has been opened, and there are signs that someone has been inside. The police are here now, but I thought you should know. As his brother, you have the right to be involved in any decisions about what to do next." Nathan dressed quickly and drove to Riverside Memorial Gardens, where he found Victoria surrounded by police officers and cemetery staff. She looked genuinely distraught, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and her eyes red from crying. Chief Donovan approached Nathan as he surveyed the scene. "This is highly unusual. We have had some vandalism in the past, but nothing like this. Whoever did this had to have had professional tools to open the casket without completely destroying it." "Has anything been stolen?" Nathan asked. "That is what we are trying to determine. We need to do a complete inventory of the casket contents, but we wanted to wait for you to arrive. Since you are the next of kin, you have the right to be present during the examination." Nathan nodded, though his mind was racing. The timing of this incident was too coincidental. He had been building a case against Victoria, gathering evidence that could eventually lead to exhumation orders for retesting. Now, suddenly, someone had conveniently broken into Daniel's grave. As they approached the mausoleum, Nathan could see that the marble facade had been carefully dismantled and then replaced. This was not the work of random vandals. This was a professional job that would have required specialized knowledge and equipment. "Before we proceed, I want to make sure we document everything properly," Nathan said. "If this is evidence of a crime, we need to preserve the scene." Chief Donovan nodded. "We have already photographed everything. But you are right to be cautious." The funeral director, a nervous man named Mr. Holbrook, used his tools to carefully open the casket. As the lid was raised, Nathan found himself staring down at what should have been his brother's peaceful resting place. Instead, he saw chaos. Daniel's body had been moved, his hands repositioned, and his burial suit had been partially removed and then replaced. But it was what Nathan saw next that made his blood run cold. Tucked beneath Daniel's folded hands was a small glass vial, half filled with a clear liquid. The vial had not been there during the funeral. Nathan was certain of that, as he had been one of the last people to view the body before the casket was closed. "What is that?" Chief Donovan asked, pointing to the vial. Nathan carefully removed the vial using a handkerchief, being careful not to contaminate any potential evidence. As he held it up to the light, he could see that the liquid was slightly viscous, with an almost oily consistency. "We need to test this immediately," Nathan said, "and we need to search the entire casket for any other foreign objects." Victoria, who had been standing behind him, suddenly became very quiet. Nathan glanced back at her and saw that her face had gone pale, and her hands were trembling slightly. "Victoria, do you have any idea what this could be?" Nathan asked, watching her reaction carefully. I have no idea. Why would someone put something like that in Daniel's casket? It is so disrespectful." But Nathan had caught something in her voice. A slight hesitation, a note of fear that seemed out of place for someone who should have been simply confused and upset. The search of the casket revealed 2 more items that had definitely not been there during the funeral. Hidden in the lining of the casket was a small notebook, written in what appeared to be Victoria's handwriting. The notebook contained detailed notes about plant toxins, their effects on the human body, and dosage calculations. The second item was even more damning, a small plastic bag containing what looked like dried plant material. Nathan's botanical knowledge was limited, but the material looked suspiciously like the foxglove and oleander that Victoria grew in her garden. "Victoria, I need you to explain these items," Chief Donovan said, her voice no longer sympathetic but commanding. Victoria's mask of grief was beginning to slip. "I have never seen those things before. Someone must have planted them there to frame me." "This is insane," but Nathan was studying the notebook more carefully, and what he saw made his heart race. The handwriting was definitely Victoria's. He had seen her handwriting on sympathy cards and thank you notes. But more importantly, the notebook contained detailed records of each of her previous husbands, including their medical histories, their daily routines, and what appeared to be documentation of their symptoms during their final illnesses. "Chief Donovan, I think we need to examine this evidence more carefully," Nathan said, "and I think we need to have a serious conversation with Victoria about her previous marriages." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "You cannot prove anything. Those items were planted by someone who wants to destroy my reputation. I am the victim here." "Are you?" Nathan asked, turning to face her directly. "Or are you the predator who has been systematically murdering husbands for 25 years? The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria stared at Nathan with an expression that was no longer grief-stricken, but calculating and cold. In that moment, Nathan saw the real Victoria Ashford for the first time, not the grieving widow, but the methodical killer who had been hiding behind a facade of respectability. "I want a lawyer," Victoria said quietly, "and I am not saying another word." The evidence found in Daniel's casket was just the beginning. Within 24 hours of Victoria's arrest, search warrants were executed for her home, and what investigators found confirmed Nathan's worst suspicions about his sister-in-law. Victoria's basement had been converted into a sophisticated laboratory, complete with equipment for extracting and concentrating plant toxins. Detailed journals documented her experiments with various natural poisons, including their effects on different types of people and the optimal dosages needed to cause specific symptoms. The most chilling discovery was a leather-bound ledger that Victoria had labeled patient records. The ledger contained detailed profiles of all 5 of her husbands, including their medical histories, daily routines, food preferences, and personality traits. Each profile was accompanied by a methodical plan for their elimination, including timeline charts showing how symptoms would progress and when death would occur. Robert Ashford had been killed with a concentrated extract of foxglove, administered gradually over several weeks through his morning coffee. The digitalis had caused his heart to become erratic, leading to the fatal car accident when he lost consciousness while driving. Thomas Whitmore had been poisoned with a combination of oleander and castor bean extract, delivered through his favorite evening whiskey. The toxins had mimicked the symptoms of heart disease, making his death appear natural. Dr. Richard Blackwood had been the most challenging victim, as his medical knowledge made him more likely to recognize the symptoms of poisoning. Victoria had used a rare toxin extracted from lily-of-the-valley plants, which caused symptoms that mimicked his existing blood disorder. Gerald Morrison had been killed with a concentrated ricin solution, administered through his food over several days. The ricin had caused severe gastrointestinal distress that had progressed to septic shock, making it appear like a case of food poisoning. Daniel Hartwell had been Victoria's latest victim, killed with a new toxin she had been experimenting with, a concentrated extract from yew tree bark that caused rapid liver failure. The symptoms had been designed to mimic a medication reaction, providing Victoria with the perfect cover story. But the most shocking discovery came when investigators found Victoria's insurance policy, a detailed video confession that she had recorded and hidden in a safety deposit box. In the video, Victoria calmly explained her methods and motivations, apparently intending to use the confession as leverage if she was ever caught. "I never intended to become a killer," Victoria said in the video, speaking directly to the camera with the same composed demeanor she had displayed as the grieving widow. "But after Robert died in that accident, I realized how easy it would be to make deaths appear natural. The insurance money gave me financial security, but it also gave me power. Each husband taught me something new about killing. Robert showed me that accidents could be arranged. Thomas taught me about toxins. Richard gave me access to medical knowledge. Gerald showed me how to cover my tracks financially. And Daniel was going to be my masterpiece, a perfect murder that would never be questioned. But I made a mistake with Daniel. His brother was a police detective, and I underestimated his persistence. I tried to create evidence that would discredit him, but I realize now that I was too clever for my own good." The video confession explained the break-in at the mausoleum. Victoria had planted the evidence herself, hoping to frame Nathan for tampering with the grave and contaminating the scene. She had planned to claim that Nathan had planted the evidence because he was mentally unstable from grief, but her plan had backfired when Nathan had immediately recognized the evidence as authentic. "I suppose I should feel guilty about what I have done," Victoria continued in the video, "but I do not. Each of my husbands gave me what I needed, and I gave them what they deserved. They were all weak men who were easily manipulated. In a way, I was doing them a favor by ending their pathetic lives." The video confession was damning enough, but Victoria's journals revealed the true scope of her crimes. She had not only murdered her 5 husbands, but had also experimented on other victims. Several unexplained deaths in the community over the years, elderly neighbors, fellow volunteers at the hospital, even some of her own pets, had been Victoria's test subjects as she perfected her methods. The prosecution built an ironclad case against Victoria Ashford, using her own meticulous records as evidence of her guilt. The defense team tried to argue that Victoria was mentally ill, but the premeditation and careful planning evident in her journals proved that she had known exactly what she was doing. During the trial, Nathan testified about his investigation and the evidence he had uncovered. He spoke passionately about his brother's life and the impact of Victoria's crimes on the entire community. "Victoria Ashford is not a victim of circumstance or mental illness," Nathan told the jury. "She is a predator who used her charm and intelligence to systematically murder innocent people for financial gain. She manipulated entire community into believing she was a tragic figure deserving of sympathy, when in reality she was a calculating killer who felt no remorse for her actions." The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all counts. Victoria was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, she showed no emotion, maintaining the same composed demeanor that had allowed her to fool an entire community for 25 years. The aftermath of Victoria Ashford's conviction sent shockwaves through the small community of Riverside. People who had known her for decades struggled to reconcile the image of the gracious widow with the cold-blooded killer who had been living among them. Support groups were formed to help community members process the trauma of discovering that someone they had trusted and admired was capable of such heinous crimes. Nathan Hartwell became something of a local hero, praised for his persistence in seeking justice for his brother and the other victims. But Nathan took no satisfaction in his success. He had lost a beloved brother, and no amount of justice could bring Daniel back. The hardest part is knowing that Daniel suffered unnecessarily, Nathan said during a community meeting held to discuss the impact of Victoria's crimes. He trusted her completely, and she used that trust to slowly poison him. None of her victims deserved what happened to them. The case led to significant changes in how suspicious deaths are investigated in small communities. The state medical examiner's office implemented new protocols for toxicology testing, particularly in cases involving multiple deaths within families or social circles. Insurance companies also began requiring more extensive background checks and medical examinations before issuing large life insurance policies. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the medical examiner who had first noticed the unusual cellular changes in Thomas Whitmore's heart tissue, established a database to track patterns in suspicious deaths across different jurisdictions. Her work has since helped identify several other potential serial killers who might have otherwise gone undetected. The most important lesson from Victoria Ashford's crimes is the danger of assuming that evil always looks evil. Victoria was intelligent, charming, and socially respected. She volunteered at charitable organizations, helped her neighbors, and presented herself as a pillar of the community. Her ability to maintain this facade for 25 years while systematically murdering 5 people demonstrates how sophisticated predators can be. "We want to believe that monsters look like monsters," said criminal psychologist Dr. Amanda Foster, who studied Victoria's case extensively. But the reality is that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who blend in seamlessly with society. They use our natural tendency to trust and sympathize with others as a weapon against us. The case also highlighted the importance of listening to instincts and asking questions when something does not feel right. Nathan's willingness to trust his detective instincts despite social pressure to accept his brother's death as natural ultimately saved future victims and brought justice to past ones. "If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong," Nathan said. "Do not let social politeness or fear of being judged prevent you from asking hard questions or seeking the truth. My brother might still be alive if someone had questioned Victoria's pattern of loss earlier." The Victoria Ashford case serves as a reminder that evil can hide behind the most innocent facades, but it also demonstrates that persistence and courage can ultimately triumph over deception and manipulation. Nathan's determination to seek justice for his brother not only exposed a killer, but also protected countless future victims who might have fallen prey to Victoria's deadly charm. Today, Nathan continues to live in Riverside, where he has become an advocate for victims' families and works with law enforcement agencies to improve investigation techniques for unusual death patterns. He has never remarried, choosing instead to dedicate his life to ensuring that no other family has to endure what he and Daniel went through. Daniel's death was not in vain if it prevents other families from suffering the same loss, Nathan said. The best way to honor the victims is to make sure their deaths serve as a warning to others about the dangers of blind trust and the importance of staying vigilant. The house on Elm Street where Victoria lived with all 5 of her husbands has been demolished, and the lot has been converted into a small memorial garden for the victims. The flowers planted there are carefully chosen: roses, daisies, and other harmless blooms that cannot be used to hurt anyone. Victoria Ashford remains in prison, where she continues to maintain her innocence despite the overwhelming evidence of her guilt. She has never expressed remorse for her actions, and psychologists who have evaluated her believe she is incapable of feeling genuine empathy for her victims. But her legacy lives on in the form of improved investigative techniques, greater awareness of domestic violence patterns, and a community that has learned the importance of looking beyond surface appearances when evaluating the people in their lives. The story of Victoria Ashford is a chilling reminder that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who pose the greatest danger. But it is also a testament to the power of persistence, courage, and the relentless pursuit of truth in the face of overwhelming deception. If you found this story compelling and want to hear more true crime cases that reveal the hidden dangers lurking in our communities, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Seat and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us bring you the most fascinating and educational crime stories from around the world. What other cases would you like us to investigate? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and never stop asking questions when something does not feel right.